Right, well, welcome to our afternoon session. I'm John Herriman and I'm the Chief Executive of Greenhouse Sports, and delighted that so many of you have come to this session and to do what we love best, which is actually to hear us talk about ourselves. Not really. So actually there's going to be lots of opportunity for lots of questions as we go through the session, and to hear from actually our real experts, which is the guys just on my right I'll introduce in a minute. So I hope that you're all sitting really comfortably, although not too comfortably, after a really nice lunch. So we'll try and keep you sort of engaged throughout the session. And I think the one thing that I've been looking forward to, and why we wanted to be here this afternoon, was we've just got such a range of experience from so many different sort of aspects of sport in this room. And we really want to get your perspective on some of the things that we're doing and to share that knowledge, which is what I think is so important within the sport for development sector. So just before we get started, what I'd just like to do, could you, in terms of just getting you sort of alert after your sort of very nice lunch, could you just sort of turn to the person next to you, just say who you are, why you're here, and what you want to get out of this session. So I'll give you 1 minute to do that. Brilliant. No call through. You go down the other door. Okay, I'm going to bring you all back if I can do. I saw that done the other day in a conference. It works really well when you just shush. It's fantastic. So just give me a couple of ideas of why you're here. What do you want to get out of this session? Just sort of 3 or 4 people. So anybody? Anybody would be good. You were really engaged about 2 minutes ago and you're not saying anything now. Yes.
Participation.
Increased participation. Yeah, we'll cover that.
I just want to know who you are and where you work.
Delighted. We can talk about that in a minute. We're very local, by the way. Any other reasons for being here? What you'd like to learn?
Just the best ways to promote sports in communities and what things they tend to like.
Fantastic.
How to work with you guys as an organisation to collaborate.
Lovely, because actually one of the opportunities we've got at the moment is actually more partnerships, particularly working in our sort of new sports centre. So anyway, so welcome to our sort of workshop. It's titled Supporting a Community to Transform Itself Through Sport. And it's actually great to be back in Y Sports presenting, because we were here earlier in the year in February, where we were asking the question as to whether sport had actually made the case. And I think we came away from that session concluding that actually the jury was still out and there's still probably quite a lot of work to do, but also concluding that actually there is nothing more important than making the case for sport. And really that's what we're focused on in both our schools and then also in our sort of new community setting with our community sports centre. And therefore, we've just got to work harder about how we prove those outcomes, because we all talk about outcomes as we were right at the start of the day with Sport England and DCMS. We've got to make those outcomes. We know they're there, but also the evidence base is there's still work to do, basically. So I'm here, but actually I'm not the real expert. So my experts are on the right-hand side. So we've got Chris, who's our programme director. Then we have Casey, who's one of our sort of ambassadors, and she'll be talking about her experience on the Greenhouse programme. Jason, who's our co-lead for our centre. He's our head sports coach there. And then Thevian, who's also one of our ambassadors. And we're delighted that both Thevian and Casey are here today, because actually you get to hear firsthand the impact of what Greenhouse Sports is about and what we're able to do. So, got that IT failure right at the start, which is always very embarrassing. Right, there we go. So going back to the aims, what we want to do is just share a little bit about greenhouse sports, what our model is, and just about our existing outcomes. But actually the key thing is then discussing how we're aiming to replicate those outcomes in a place-based community setting. And that's really what part of the conversation today is all about. So maybe just a little bit about greenhouse sports for those of you who don't know a huge amount about us. So we're a community sports intervention and we passionately believe in the power of intensive sports coaching and mentoring to transform the lives of young people. It's just about creating those opportunities. We only work in London, and specifically we focus on those areas of greatest community need because we think that's where our work is best suited. And to date, our model has been placing a full-time extracurricular sports coach into a state school, and that's all about participation. And what we find is if you get good at participation, then you actually get also very good at performance, as you'll hear in a little while. And that's supporting grassroots sports development, and it's also supporting those wider social outcomes of sport. And if I was to sum up our model, however, I'd sum it up in a very short phrase, which is all about the coach just creating that spark in a young person, or actually the spark that's created between a coach and a young person, who then grows and develops with the support of that coach. And it's about creating that environment so that young person is then able to go on and achieve some incredible things just because they've been given that opportunity. It's not lack of ability, it's actually just about creating those opportunities. And you'll hear about how Casey and Vivian have been through that sort of programme with Jason, who they've got to know very well over these years. Now, in terms of the evidence base and the outcomes, we put ourselves through the mill last year with Loughborough University, and we asked them to sort of critically evaluate the programmes. We thought we were really good, basically. And then we said to Loughborough, are we as good as we think we are? And they came back and they did some very thorough research, which was both qualitative and quantitative in its analysis. And this was their conclusion, which you can read up there on the board. Which is there is widespread evidence that engagement with greenhouse sports raises attendance and academic performance and achieves positive behavioural change. So we were incredibly proud of all of our young people who actually this research was about, who've gone on to achieve some amazing things. And the research with Loughborough just went on to prove that essentially. And that's all about creating positive outcomes in a community setting, which is what we're all about. And our specific belief is that any sports intervention has got to be intensive and long-term to make that difference. And it's all about creating that environment in which you can create that spark for us between the sort of the coach and the young person. And for us, in terms of creating that community, it's all been about creating that in state secondary schools, which has been for us the best way to engage with young people because you're working with a partner then who's actually focused on the development of young people. But it's not just about working in a community like a school, it's also about creating a community. So it's an intensive sports and coaching intervention over a long term, but it's then how you create a community within a community to then help a community. And then you're just able to create that environment in which all that magic can happen. And then we continue to do that outside the school setting in terms of what we've been doing for the last 15, 16 years through our sports clubs and then also through an apprenticeship programme that we run at the same time. And then what that's able to do is then support a wider system, which is the community that we're able to then create across our schools with that sort of common greenhouse link. It extends the relationships we've built up with the national governing bodies to the universities that some of our young people are then able to go to. One of the proudest things I think that we've had this year is that all of our year 13s on our basketball programmes all got into their universities of choice. So it's not just about the sport, it's actually about where our young people end up at the end of the day. And now what we've done is we've taken this really exciting step into opening what is an amazing new community sports facility, which is literally about 15 minutes walk from here. So if anybody's going back to Marylebone Station, literally 5 minutes walk away from Marylebone Station, there is a community sports centre, which is just a huge church, which has been fortunate enough to be gifted as a charity. I know that doesn't happen to many charities, but actually we're incredibly fortunate that's happened to us. And what we want to do there is to really drive innovation in sports and activity in a community setting, and to take our intensive sports coaching and mentoring model that's worked in our school setting, and then to replicate that within this different environment. So it's about taking what we know works in a community setting within schools and then replicating that within a wider community setting in Marylebone. And then that centre is going to sit at the heart of the greenhouse model, and our young people will come to the centre from our wider schools as well as just supporting that community within Westminster. And what we're aiming to do is build that new community through the centre, which is going to be working in partnership with the local community, and then that will help the local community to then transform itself into one that's more active, one that brings all those sort of health benefits that we know, one that supports individual development. It's going to support better social integration, and it's going to help everybody support each other through initiatives around sort of volunteering. And it's going to be one massive project, which is massively exciting, but also there are a massive number of challenges that go with that. And today, I think we're going to be quite open. We know some of the answers, but we don't know all of those answers. And actually that experience that exists in this room for us is going to be really important. So the centre for us is new territory. It's going to be a case study that we really want to sort of open out to you today to get your sort of your feedback on it. And this workshop is an opportunity for us to share where we're up to, because we only opened it in May. And just to be very open about the fact that we don't have all those answers, but just to show you what it is that we're doing. So that's enough for me, because I now want to hand over to actually the real experts that are in the room. So I'll hand over to Chris, who'll now start to talk about some of the positive outcomes that we have through our school programme. And then we'll then start to look at the sports centre. So Chris.
Okay, so as John pointed out, we have 50 school programmes across inner London. We target specifically schools of lower deprivation, so they have to be 67% on the Adaki index, and we then target students within those schools as well, working hard and closely with the schools. So it'll be an opportunity, first of all, to talk to Jason, because Jason, when he started with Greenhouse Sports right back at the beginning, 15 years ago, also, Jason came as an elite performer in table tennis on the world scene, and then was brought in to start some of our programs in the schools. So it would be useful to talk to Jason around how that works, and then talk to Tivian in particular, who was Jason's first participants in year 7, and then talk to Casey as well about her experiences. So firstly, Jason, as a coach in a school-based program, what is the secret to engaging young people? What's the spark?
Before I start, it's not very often I get to sit down on the job, so this is quite good for me. I'm normally running around picking up balls. It's a great question, something I think about a lot. I've been doing it for 15 years, and I've been based in 3 different schools. And when I first started, I was still kind of finishing my playing career. And I was quite lucky enough to go around the world and play in different clubs and learn about different communities, and that was the best bit for me, was always, even though I was going to different countries and different clubs, it was this sense of a place that you belonged. And in schools, believe it or not, I mean, they're tough places. Kids go in, they get told what to do all day long. They're under different pressures, the teachers are under pressure, so they don't get much nice time, if that makes sense. So coming to spend a bit of time with a table tennis coach in a school, hitting some table tennis balls, talking a little bit about what they like doing, and maybe playing less video games and exercising a bit more and having a bit of fun, and they'd come back and we'd have a bit of a chat, and before you know it, you've got 5 or 6 kids who then bring their mates, and you're making this little bit of a nice community. And as you go through that little journey, you start to test them a little bit more and talk about, actually, I don't really want you here after school, because you could be doing a bit of homework. Can I see you tomorrow at 7 a.m? And they're like, what? And 1 or 2 of them will say, yeah, we'll start coming at 7 a.m. and then building this community. So, I mean, working in schools, like I said, even though I'm in and I'm based around the curriculum, and I do a lot of work in PE lessons and sometimes small group sessions and targeted pupils, it was always around them being able to come and be part of an extra community within their school. So, I mean, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. And when I go around visiting the head teachers, because essentially they pay about 40% of the cost of the programme, so they are very interested where their money is going. It's interesting that lots of the different head teachers have a different focus on the young people that our coaches work with. So that might be because there have been some behavioural issues. It could be that they're lacking confidence, or they have an issue with 1 or 2 subjects and maybe relationships with teachers. So coaches like Jason, and Jason's very reflective of the 50 coaches we have out there at the moment, the head coaches, they will work hard to engage with the young people. It might be that they go and sit in a classroom, in a maths class, and then encourage that young person who's part of the family, part of the greenhouse spirit within the school, to change those behaviours and to role model what the coach is teaching them. So when we employ coaches for our school-based programme, yes, the history of their ability and their qualifications is important, but actually we employ on the personality, and we make sure that coach understands that an individual personalised approach is the most important thing for our model to work. So Jason, I was wondering if you could, as you know Tivian quite well, because he was in Crest Academy, the programme that Jason first set up for us in that school in Brent. Maybe you could ask Tivian a few questions about how he got engaged with you and the Greenhouse programme.
Tivian is never quiet. Never. He's unbelievably nervous. I can hear his teeth chattering. So, what made you get started within the Greenhouse programme at Crest?
Basically, when I started in year 7. So, one day I would just, it's like you wouldn't miss like the main place where they would like play table tennis and that. One day I was walking past, and after Jason called me over, and after we were having a conversation, can't really remember, and I was getting to know him a bit more. Seemed like a nice guy. I liked his personality. He was down to earth. So yeah. Then after me and my mates, we went to a few training sessions here and there. Then after, next thing you know, I'm coming 7 in the morning, seeing after school, coming Saturdays. Yeah. Then after, I started playing competitions. I liked it. Yeah. Then after, came a bit better, been a few matches, and yeah.
So he says he can't remember the conversation. I remember the very first conversation. I was telling him off, actually. I think he was walking to the changing room and distracting my table tennis session that was really important to me. And then I just said to him, if you really want to annoy me, why don't you actually come and be part of the session? And he decided to do that, and I haven't got rid of him since. One of the best things about Tivian being on the programme is he probably won't like me saying this, but from year 7 he had some slight issues in terms of maybe his attitude and how he dealt with maybe things that didn't go quite his way. So talk to me about your journey through Greenhouse and how you think it's helped you in a positive way in terms of some of your behaviours that maybe the school didn't look at very well.
Cheers. Oh yeah. I would have what's it? Let me put this. I wouldn't deal with losing really well, I'd say. So I would just get angry if I lose or anything. And after that would also impact my behaviour and my mentality. So I would just lose a bit of my head a bit. Then after Jason noticed that, he would tell me off a bit, and after he would just give me a bit of advice. And after years of controlling and discipline and working hard, I've been able to like control it now. So, and also obviously my attitude and my personality has changed into a better person. So yeah.
Okay, so what we'll do, I'm just going to talk about the centre briefly, and then Casey will be able to tell us about how she started on a school programme and then how that allows her then to come in the centre and how that works for her as well. So as John mentioned, we have opened our new centre in Marylebone, and Marylebone sounds like a very wealthy part of London. In fact, some parts of Marylebone are, as some parts of Westminster are. But actually, the church ward where the church is, the converted church, the sports centre, has 82% of the households in at least one dimension of deprivation, and that's based on employment, education, health and disability, or overcrowding. And also, when you look at the Adaki index, the income deprivation affecting children index, 57% of people living in that ward are in the bottom 5% of deprivation in the entire country. And this is typical of London, probably all of our major cities actually, where you have very poor areas next to relatively wealthy areas. So it was a good place for the choice of the centre. 4 years in the making, from purchasing it and then developing it and turning it. The picture of it here with Daniel, one of our coaches. And also you can see the Princes that opened the building. Quite an exciting evening for us back in May. So the centre will enable us then to take this model from the schools and reach more people in a very poor community in London. The aim is to reach 2,000 additional people through the centre, and it gives us an opportunity to target approaches towards other groups, such as families, low economic groups, girls, young people and young people with disabilities. Also, it's an opportunity to develop our volunteer workforce by working with some of the businesses and some of the Westminster groups and partners that are near the centre. And a good example of that is the big French bank, BNP Paribas, who you might recognise because they sponsor the French Open. They're about 200 yards away from us. So we've been doing a lot of work with their employees. They might come in to play socially at lunchtime and pay to be a member of the centre, but they've also got a number of volunteers that are starting to come in from these businesses and help Jason and his team deliver in the centre. So overall, the Greenhouse Centre is an inclusive environment that brings together people of different ages, abilities and backgrounds and helps to address inactivity and social inequality in this deprived community in London. It's a high quality coaching centre that delivers innovative activities. It's an opportunity to adapt our successful coaching methodology that we talked about in the schools that Tivian was a part of, and then deliver and project that out to a wider community, and also a centre of excellence for sports coaches and creating a vehicle to better support young people with sports coaching and leadership development through our apprenticeship, through the Royal Foundation Coach Corps, as well as some of our performance who now go to the centre. So that gives us an opportunity now to talk to Casey. So Casey started at a school in Southwark, South London, Sacred Heart School, with Daniel, who's pictured there, who's now a coach in the centre. So maybe starting with Jason, how is your switch in responsibility? So Jason no longer is head coach in the school. He's now leading coaching in the sports from the centre and also the co-lead for the centre. So how do we take that piece of magic that we talked about in the school and then project that out into the community?
So before the centre opened, we actually created pathways for all of our schools in order for them to be able to compete nationally, the young people, and to have exit routes outside of the schools. Because, again, it's great to have that little community within your school, but actually then you're not really learning too much about different places and different parts of London and travelling and learning from each other. So we quite often got schools to partner up, maybe even sometimes 3 schools go together, and every holiday all these schools would practice together, train together, the coaches would learn from each other, the young people would spend more time with each other. So we kind of created a much broader community before the centre even existed. And then we have what we call our performance program, which is more of I wouldn't say high-end performance actually, because it's not just about a level of performance, it's about a level of behaviour. So our performance players are much more based around their time on the program, so how many years they've been with us, the culture we build, the attitudes they have to bring each day to train. And if you have all those things right, getting good at sport, it just happens. It just manifests itself in different ways, and the amount you put in and the effort, all those things. There's no lies about that. Or it definitely does happen, and kids are living evidence of that. So we then decided to move these training sessions into the centre. So as a coach based in a school-based program, all the coaches work together to try and get the young people to utilise the centre and use it as much as they can during holidays and in the evenings after school. And that also then gives the coach at their own school more capacity to work with more kids, to bring more kids in. So we've got this sort of pathway that leads to what we call elite performance, but I think it's much more than just performance, it's elite culture and elite behaviour. We've been really lucky actually that we sort of have designed it this way. So now as the doors open, we already had this great high level culture and behaviour happening every day. So when the local community were coming in who'd never maybe looked at a table tennis table before, and they're coming into our centre and they're seeing this level of behaviour, I mean, it is mind-blowing, I imagine, if you've never really seen those type of cultures or that type of behaviour. So in terms of how moving into the centre has happened for me. I mean, it's been seamless. It's been something that we've been preparing for as long as I've been with Greenhouse, which is 15 years. So like I say, yeah, in terms of that, it's pretty straightforward.
So in terms of, so we've got the young people from our school programs that come into the centre, and then we've got the performance group that work in the centre too. So Casey, maybe you can tell us about, as one of those participants, how the community centre has now allowed you to help Jason deliver to some of the community that have been coming in.
Well, I think firstly the centre's just made everything easier. So travelling is much easier now. Instead of having to travel to different schools to be able to train, everyone can meet in one place and everyone gets to see each other, and then we get to see all the coaches all the time. So instead of just getting help from one person, we can go to all the different people and ask them. And I think, but at the same time, I think we help the coaches as well, because there's primary schools around that come in, and kids in the local community come in and they play, and we can help our coaches coach them, and we talk to them, and we get to know them as well, and they get to see what they could become as well.
Great. And Jason, in the summer, all of our school programs provide summer camps and half-term and Easter holiday camps as well. So it's not just a school-time delivery. Now, we're doing the same thing in the centre, and this was our first opportunity this year to run a 6-week summer camp. So what did that look like for the community?
Mayhem. No, it was really, really good. As a coach working in a school, if you're getting a kid before school or after school, or generally they're under a lot of different pressures, so maybe you don't always get the best of them. But in the holiday time, when they're fully focused, I mean, imagine spending 5-6 hours with young people that you're passionate about developing, and you get them exclusively to yourself. It really is a joy in terms of being a coach and having that time. And the centre just really helps with that. So we moved some of the performance program into the centre this summer. But not only that, so we'd finish the performance group, we'd finish training, and then we'd have 2 sessions with the local community where they could come in, and we would do multi-sport sessions or specific table tennis sessions. And we delivered 6 weeks, and we were at capacity nearly every single day. So, I mean, we literally couldn't have any more people in. So, I mean, already in a very short space of time, we opened the doors on the 14th of April. And we were still trying to play catch up until just about the Christmas holidays. We didn't the summer holidays. We probably didn't advertise as well as we might, but we were just, full mobbed. So it was really, really good. And like I say, that part for me is the real special bit, when you get, kids for that number of hours focused and training, and it is sport for development. So it's not, it's a lot of fun, but it's also quite focused what we're doing. We're really structured in terms of our standards and expectations, and they know what's expected of them. And young people, they need that sort of fun guidance, and then getting to do it for long periods of time rather than just after school or before school makes a huge difference.
During the summer as well, we forged a relationship with the Felix Project, who take unsold food from cafes like Pret a Manger, and then they brought that to the centre. So we were able to feed the young people from the community as well, which was fantastic, for those guys. Now, also, one of the points I want to make is that table tennis isn't our only sport. We have 5 main sports we focus on. So as well as table tennis, we have basketball, volleyball, tennis, and judo. So the idea is that the centre is also going to be delivering some of those sports and other sports too. So what's the future plan, Jason, in terms of not just table tennis, but other activities?
Just about now, a basketball session's kicking off alongside a table tennis session after school. So we've got basketball happening. After October half term, we're going to start delivering a serves tennis program, which is indoor short tennis, which should really widen our provision. We've got, I think judo is going to be starting soon, but we're not quite sure whether we're going to go judo or maybe a little bit more self-defense. I mean, as we explained earlier, that the area that we're in is probably has some different needs, so we're trying to work out exactly what works best for the local community. Sitting volleyball, we're going to have, so we've got within the centre, we've got really high-end quality facilities, and we can have this great sitting volleyball club that we're going to build, and that's probably a little bit further away in terms of when we're going to be starting that. I just want to get the first few sports in. But yeah, we're going to try and do loads of different activities within the centre. and for us, it's quite a steep learning curve, as John mentioned earlier, that now we're not only working with 11 to 16-year-olds. I mean, we've got 4-year-olds to, yesterday we had 94-year-olds in playing. So it's a little bit different, a lot of fun, a lot of learning. But yeah, we want to really widen our scope to do lots of different sports, and maybe not even sports, just getting people moving, and in any activity, especially for the older community as well, is important.
So in terms of the partnerships that we've started to develop now in Westminster, can you give a couple of examples of, say, the volunteering, for example, and other groups that are starting to utilise the centre?
Yeah, definitely. So we've partnered with a women's refuge, which is just down the road. So they're trying to integrate some of their people that live with them back into the community. So we're delivering some coaching sessions for them and trying to give them some positive role models in terms of having our coaches deliver to those. We also are starting to work with different partners around pupil referral units to try and see how we can use our model to learn a little bit about what they do and how we can do it. I mean, when I first started coaching, actually, one of my favourite jobs was working in a pupil referral unit, which was a lot of fun and great grounding for becoming a greenhouse coach. So we've got those partnerships. We're going to work with the governing bodies, obviously, to make sure we can deliver a long, sustainable program. I mean, there's so much I can't even think.
It could be a good opportunity, actually, to open up some questions. Anyone that might have a question for anyone that's sat in the panel, but particularly the participants and Jason. Yeah.
Hi. Have you come across Polybet, which obviously uses a table tennis table, and it's for blind and partially sighted people using a sound ball?
So one of a whole week of the summer delivery was for special educational needs program. So we had 4 Polybet tables up, along with different fun games, activities, board games, and other sports, bocce, and different bits and pieces.
I'm interested in, I work for Metro Blind Sports, so I'm interested in blind and partially sighted people, which there are hundreds of children across London taking part in more activities. I know the problems they have at schools is that their transport delivers them, early and collects them early, so they don't go to after-school clubs. I wondered if you've got over that problem with access to the school, and whether you provide Polybet for blind and partially sighted children using soundball. Certainly, the other two sports that you mentioned, tennis, which is very popular with VI people in London, and also judo, which again is a Paralympic sport for VI participants. So I'm just interested really on the VI section within your 50 schools that you talked about.
Our mainstream schools, how many SEN schools have we got, John? So 7. Across those 7, we would be...
I'm talking about mainstream schools. Most of the VI children are at mainstream schools. They're not at special schools.
We've got a variety, actually. So one school, Eastleigh School in West Ham, has got a specialised unit. And the coach there has got several sessions during the day where they have it's not polybats, but they've got the wings on the table tennis tables, and they do without a net.
I think these people are lost within the community.
Yeah.
Most of the state schools have got somebody who's blind or partially sighted at a school with their brothers and sisters, and they're lost within that group. They're not in a special group, they're not in a special school, they're just going along there, they get adapted computers, adapted whiteboards, they've got large print, they've got a large text, but they are not getting any activity. So they're lost within that group. Hundreds of them within London.
Yeah, it's...
They closed all the specialist schools in London. They're lost now within mainstream education.
So I think it's one of the challenges that we're seeing as well, certainly in mainstream education, and it's one of the reasons that we're so proud that we've got 7 special educational needs schools as well, although actually it's about integration of pupils with special educational needs into mainstream education as well. The challenge...
If you go to university, they haven't got an educational problem. Their education is fine. It's their sport. This is the bit that we're here. That's why we're here today. It's about increasing their sporting opportunities.
So if we could talk after this, and the reason for this is because the sports centre for us is creating a different opportunity. In a school, we are slightly constrained by the school facilities and what the school wants to do, to be honest. What we're able to do in the centre, and we've actually invested a huge amount of money into inclusivity and integration. And actually, we view it as integration. We don't want to just create opportunities for those with some form of disability to play sport. We want to do integrated. and sometimes you can't, but sometimes you can. And there was a fantastic example the other day. Jason ran the opening of the table tennis club. It was on a Thursday night, and we had a whole range of players there, including those from the British GB, or the GB Paralympic team, which included, I think, the first sports coach in the UK with Down syndrome. So one of the things that we're able to do in the centre is be genuinely innovative and to push those boundaries. And if anybody's got any ideas about how we can do that better, we would genuinely love to hear from you. And just to give you an idea of some of the things that we're able to do with the centre that we've not been able to do before, because we can now extend the age ranges that we work with, we're now actually working with a visually impaired dance group. And that's for those who've got visual impairments, and that's a fantastic session that we're running once a week. And then we've also got a disability dance group for those in wheelchairs. So again, we're pushing the boundaries, but we're learning as we go along. And we'd love to hear from anybody who's got more ideas about how we do that.
Okay, any other questions? Yes.
Can I ask Casey and Vivian, what's the most exciting thing about the community centre for you?
Well, there's a lot to choose from probably going to meet my friends who I also train with, to meeting new people, to be able to play in matches and winning tournaments that we have there. I mean, there's so much, like even just spending time, like we have breakout areas downstairs where we can just talk and like chill out, and it's just, all of it's great, to be honest, yeah.
Like what Casey said, yeah, most of it, but it's also like a place where we can like, it's like a meet point where most of like the community and like my mates can like, we can just like, on a Saturday, just be like, after training, we just be like, I'll meet you at the centre. So, you know, it's a place to be like, it's safe, like, and plus we got coaches here, it's a nice place.
One last question, just before we ask you to do a couple of bits for us. No? Okay. So what I'd like you to do with the person you spoke to earlier, maybe a group of 3 or 4, if you're sat near to 3 or 4 people, is just to think about this question: what would you like to see in an innovative community sports centre? So if you could create that yourself, what are the 1 or 2 priorities you'd want to see as the outcomes for that centre? So I'll give you 1 or 2 minutes just to discuss that quickly. Okay, 30 seconds left. Okay, if we can stop there. Shh. Great. Okay, is there anyone who would like to kick things off with some feedback of what you'd think, if you had a magic wand and could create this amazing hub for a community for sport, what would it look like? What would be in that centre? Anybody? Yes.
I want it to be run by the community.
Is that through volunteers or employees from? Yeah.
Volunteering, through support, through gaining qualifications, opportunities for them to be employed within the community.
Great, yeah, and that's something that's certainly on our radar. And whether it's people that transition in for work and then go home or live in the community, certainly some of the new employees we've had to bring on board are from the community, which is no. But it's really helpful for us as well because they give us an insight into things that are happening in the community and things we might need to do. So it's been very useful actually having people from the community working with us. And
One is engage in whole family activity.
yeah,
Is that clearly for a lot of families, if the parent hasn't had an interest, the young person or the child hasn't. So actually trying to engage them in whole family activity where they
Yeah.
do it together
yeah.
builds sort of positive behaviour for a long time after.
Yeah, and we've initiated community sessions that are open for exactly that, which is a great idea. Anything else? Yes.
A lot of blind people don't participate in activities because they can't get to the venue, they don't know the route.
Yeah,
So if they could have a buddy that might just walk with them to the venue
that's a
and
great idea.
support them,
Yeah.
would be good. And in a sense, I suppose I would like the centre to not exclude anybody.
That's our aim.
That is
Yeah.
a big aim.
Yes. Yeah. A great point. Anything else? Yes.
I might sound a bit stupid, but a lot of sports centres, they own the look of them, the smell of them, only attracts people who are super sporty.
Yeah.
So how do you get people in who, I noticed in your photo earlier, it said it was entitled Greenhouse Centre. It didn't actually say sports centre.
No, and that's intentional.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
how do you get people in who are just mega sporty already?
Well, we've got a community manager, so his role is communicating with all the groups in the community, which is one of the reasons why fairly quickly we've managed to have a diverse group, so such as the blind dance group. There's also a Bollywood dance group that come in, women only, Indian group. So straight away we're sort of listening to the community and trying to ask what they want of the centre to be, so that it isn't just perceived to be exclusive high performance sport, which we do have through table tennis, but it's much, much bigger than that. So one of the important things to us is that listening ear to the community, so we know exactly what they want from us.
We also offer out the space for meetings and lunches and different bits and pieces, so people don't actually just have to come in and play sport. They can use our space for anything.
So we have with Westminster call it the Wellbeing Cafe. So it's predominantly aimed at the older generation, but it's somewhere they can come in and talk, and there's people from the local authority there that can help if there's issues that come out during that meeting. So that's an example of thinking outside of the box from just the performance sport. Any other thoughts that came from your conversations a moment ago? Yes.
We were talking about how you engage the other local organisations, because they quite often have the people who wouldn't come through the centre, so kind of a steering group or something else that allows housing associations, addiction clinics, the really hub local organisations.
Yeah, so creating a steering group in the community that helps make those decisions, that's a good idea too. Yeah.
I want to know how you manage relationships with parents from ethnic minorities. A lot of them, it would be a first-time situation where they'll have a child who's, I guess, transitioning into an athlete's lifestyle. Maybe the other aspirations that they might have had, you have to also manage.
Yeah, I mean, part of our school programs and the centre program, there's a variety of barriers and challenges that the coaches have. We are in for example, a couple of schools that are mainly, well, there's an all-girls school that is mainly Muslim. We run a volleyball program there, and the girls there's over 100 girls that come along to the training sessions, and it helps to break down some of the cultural expectations of them at home, and also at the same time doesn't distract from mum and dad's need for academic performance, which sometimes comes through and stops them from playing sport. So we work closely with the school to break down those sort of barriers to make sure that it's highly inclusive and understand the power of sport along with their academic studies. Any other points? Yes.
It's very difficult sometimes for PE departments to actually recruit people to come after school. What's your magic secret? How have you managed to get so many people?
Well, Jason, could you, having set up the programme in a school, how does that work for you?
It's a combination of things. One is just creating that nice place that we're talking about, and not being too strict at the start, and maybe having a bit of fun. The second one is actively recruiting people, and so at lunchtime walking around and just spending a bit of time having a bit of fun and sitting at dinner tables and talking. It's just about relationship building, really. I mean, also, if you work well enough with the different departments within the school, I mean, it's amazing what a pub on a Friday after, how many teachers talk about students in a different light, and going along to those and then saying, well, you know what, I think I can help there a little bit. And then next week you go in and you might go in and sit in a lesson, and then you try and invite that person maybe for a one-to-one session rather than being in that lesson where they're causing a bit of disruption. And it kind of, I mean, the kids like being in a place where it feels nice. They like being with people that they know are actually really there to kind of support their development in a different way than what a teacher can. So it's just about, yes, it's a lot about time and building relationships. And then when you have different kind of exit routes for them in terms of competitions, making sure that everybody has access to those at their level they want to play at is hugely important. Inviting other schools in to work together, then trying to get the teachers to come down into your space where they see the kids in a different light. So, and before you know it, you know, if you've got teachers down in doing after-school clubs with you rather than actually upstairs where they might be doing a detention normally, it's quite powerful. It has long-lasting results. I hope that answers your question.
No, that's really good. That's really good. Interaction's fantastic. Well done.
We're actually over time, so I've been told that I've got to stop things. So I'd like to thank you for your interaction today. We're hanging around to the end, so if any of you would like to talk to any of us, including the participants, please come and find us afterwards. Thank you very much.